Thank you very much, Mr. Norcross. I consider it an honor to have the privilege of participating in this discussion between the two candidates running for the office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. We are very, I think, fortunate to have two well-qualified candidates, and certainly look forward to having them respond to questions that will be posed at each of them. The rules for this discussion will be 3 minutes opening statement by each candidate. Dr. Atkinson will go first, followed by Mr. Tedesco. And then a 3-minute closing statement by each candidate. Mr. Tedesco will go first, and Dr. Atkinson will go last. I totally agree on. Questions will be posed to the candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question, and 1 minute for a rebuttal by any candidate who wishes to make one. I'm delighted to have this privilege, certainly to be associated with all of you here. I commend you for being in attendance of this alliance. This is an opportunity to examine the people who will be influencing the decisions that will determine the functioning of our charter schools here in the state. So with that, unless there's some uncertainty on the part of the candidates, I'd like to summon Dr. Atkinson to the podium, make her opening statement, and then followed by Mr. Tedesco.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you very much. Hello? Shall we begin again? Good afternoon. I'm Judy Atkinson, and I am running for state superintendent. I appreciate very much the Alliance's Board of Directors for sponsoring this debate today. It is important to the citizens of North Carolina, and especially to our children and parents, the office of state superintendent. Why do I say that? First of all, the state superintendent represents our state in our nation and in the world. Our superintendent is responsible for leading the Department of Public Instruction to carry out the policies of the State Board of Education. The superintendent is responsible for making recommendations to the State Board of Education on behalf of the 1.5 million children we have in our schools, including charters. So the office of state superintendent is very important to the 1.5 million children we have in our state. What is my record as state superintendent? Since I took office in 2005, our graduation rate has gone to an all-time high. We have gained 10 points in the last 5 years. And while I'm very pleased with that progress, I also know that we have much more to do. North Carolina has also received 3 national awards for our innovation in helping students, for our leadership in the United States in public education. Education Week on January 12, 2012, ranked North Carolina's education system the highest it's ever been in our history, ranked number 17. So we have made much progress in education, but there is much more to do in making sure that all of our students graduate, that we use technology in meaningful and different ways to personalize education, that we help each teacher in the classroom and each principal in every building to provide the best education possible for all of our children. I have a deep and rich background in public education, and I have learned a lot from students, teachers, business people across this state and the nation. Why? Because I listen. Why? Because I do my research. Why? Because I do my homework. Education is too important not to listen, not to do research, and not pay attention to what is important in moving our state forward. I have learned a lot from students, but I also learned a lot as being a teacher, a vocational education director, now we call career technical education. All of these experiences that I have had will help our state propel itself to even a better place than we are today. I look forward to our debate.
Good afternoon. I am John Tedesco, running for North Carolina State Superintendent. It's a great honor to be here with all of you today. I want to thank the Alliance and the sponsors of this luncheon for hosting this debate. I think it's a great opportunity. And I consider it an honor because, as you've heard Paul say in the beginning, you are the tip of the spear in bringing change to North Carolina. I am a firm believer that while we are doing a handful of things a little better and make a couple ticks here or there, one year to the next, that it is far from good enough at this point, and that our children right now can no longer wait for the slow evolution of public education, but we need a revolution. And to bring that revolution forward, we need organizations like yours to help us be that catalyst to move our children forward. I want to tell you a brief bit about me, why I'm running for this role, and why I think I'm the best candidate to move us forward. You heard a little bit about my personal resume and background. As a personal side of me, I'm a family man. My wife Jenny and I actually had the opportunity this morning to put our son Gabriel on the bus for his first day of middle school in a year-round program we have in Wayne County. And I helped raise my younger 3 siblings when my mother died through Gardner Middle and Gardner High Schools. And now they're all at Wayne Tech Community College in Wayne County. And those children are my heart, and I've fought for them my entire life. But prior to coming to the school board, I had served in a variety of capacities as Chief Development Officer for Big Brothers Big Sisters across North Carolina, building the North Carolina Mentoring Children of Prisoners program, working with 13,000 children a year who were targeted because they needed someone involved in their lives. Prior to that, I served as the Director of Development for a project called Harbor House, working with 8,000 children a year who were homeless and abused. And what I saw was a systematic system that is failing our children. Our focus has been on systems. We've watched over the last quarter century as we built up our systems, as educational spending in the U.S. has tripled while performance is flatlined, and we built up our systems. And what we failed to do is build up our children. And I think it is time that we had someone who was bold enough, brave enough to challenge the status quo from outside the establishment, who can bring a new, fresh set of ideas. There are a lot of folks who've challenged me on different ideas and have seen me as someone who, in some cases, they call a transformative force. That was a quote from Raleigh News and Observer years. And why is that? Because I'm not afraid to stand up for the courage of what I believe in. I will never ask to be the person that everybody likes. I want to stand up and challenge the system. I want to challenge us. And when you do that, people will stand against you. But I think we need to stand strong for school choice, for empowering parents, for increasing opportunities for our children, for raising the bar for all children across North Carolina. If we're going to build a better educated workforce for the state, I think our children deserve better, and quite frankly, I think the future of our state depends on it. Thank you.
Couple more housekeeping matters. I will pose up to 6 questions to each of the candidates. Then 5 to 6 questions then will be set up by you, members of the audience. So think about questions you'd like to ask the candidates that we can then pose to the candidates. And also, while I'm at it, I'd like to encourage the people who are serving, proceed with the serving. We're going to challenge our candidates to see if they can focus on keep their eyes on the prize and focus and not be distracted by the food. The first question will be, I will pose to Dr. Atkinson. And it has to do with the role, if any, public schools should think about playing in providing vocational education to students.
Having been a career technical educator or a vocational director I recognize how important it is for our students to have the opportunity to take career and technical education in our schools. There are several reasons why vocational education is important. Number one, we know that the graduation rate of our students who take courses in career technical education was 9% last year. Vocational education gives students an opportunity to understand, why do I need this stuff? Why am I learning this information? Also, it has given our students in this state to receive 51,225 Microsoft credentials and these credentials mean something in the world of work. So vocational education is critical, and that's why I'm pleased that every single large county in this state, except Wake County, has devoted time, money, and effort to have career technical centers. And we have found from those centers that the graduation rates from those schools far exceed 90%. Most of them have a graduation rate of 95% or higher. Vocational education works for students. Vocational education prepares students for further education in our community colleges. And it is important that North Carolina continues to have the resources necessary to be able to offer not only electives in vocational education, but electives in arts and other subjects that keep students in school.
We're going to have to learn that together. So. I couldn't agree. Hello? Okay, I couldn't agree more about the importance of vocational education. In fact, today we have some of our brochures because we've laid out a 4-point plan on how to better build a better educated workforce in North Carolina, and that includes expanding vocational education. We know not every child is necessarily going to college, and we want to have opportunities for those children. What we do know is that over the last 10 years in North Carolina, when you look at the amount of vocational courses offered throughout our LEAs across this state, we've decreased. We've gone down. And instead of expanding vocational opportunities, we've reduced those opportunities. And what we need to do is expand them in multiple ways. What we did in Wake County is actually expand within each of our high schools. We've actually just did a partnership with our county commissioners. We bought an old Coca-Cola plant. We're going to create a CTE high school. We've expanded our partnership with Wake Tech Community College as well. But I mean, I want to take it a step further. I want to innovate even further in how we do that. Open the doors. Kick down the doors to how we do things. I went to the Wake County Builders Association, and I said, you know what? Why don't we have an apprenticeship program in every one of our high schools with you, working with us, where children, you take their core class in the morning and in the afternoon, they can get certified and be job ready day one.
The federal government is certainly a partner in educating our children, and we expect to see that role certainly to be a part of our educational process going forward. To each of the candidates, starting with Mr. Tedesco, what is the role of the federal government in public education?
Well, I think this is where I'm sure myself and some other colleagues may disagree, but I think their role should be limited. I think they've expanded their role in excess of what is constitutionally allowed to them. I am very proud and honored that education in North Carolina takes a prominent position in our Constitution. Education is a states' rights issue. One of the things I talk about regularly, and unfortunately, because of the system we currently do have, we're going to have to work within the framework that we have. But I think the superintendent and the Department of Public Instruction needs to be strong. A lot of folks on the campaign trail recently in the Republican nomination challenged me on that idea. How can you want a strong State Department of Education? Don't you want limited government? And I do, but education is a states' rights issue. And we need strong leadership that can stand up to the Federal Department of Education when they have an agenda that may not be right for our children. In addition, when they have an agenda that we are moving forward with, we need to be able to deliver that in a manner that is consistent with the needs of our schools, our local communities, and help empower local districts. I believe the best decisions are made in local communities. And my goal would be to expand local controls across North Carolina and empower and increase local communities.
The federal government does have a role in public education. Approximately 16% of our funds come from the federal government. A large slice of those dollars go to local school districts with children in poverty. It's important that the State Department of Public Instruction and the U.S. Department of Education work in partnership. I have worked to make sure that we have waivers from No Child Left Behind, a critical component of learning more as we go along. We need to make some changes. We also need to make sure that the federal government focuses on outcomes and not processes to determine where our state goes in education.
Dr. Atkinson, how would you change, if at all, how North Carolina interprets all right, Dr. Atkinson, how would you change how North Carolina interprets ESEA and tell the audience what that means?
ESE, you can hear me now, can't you? ESEA is the name of the federal legislation that many of you know as No Child Left Behind. I serve on a committee with 4 of my counterparts throughout the United States where we are making our recommendations to Congress to change ESEA. There are several important components. Number one, we need to have an accountability system that focuses how students are doing along the way rather than a focus at the end with just one test. We need to have greater flexibility when it comes to how we get to the outcomes that all of us want for our children. Another component that we are recommending is to give support to professional development. We're asking more of our teachers, we're asking more of our principals, and in so doing we need to provide a support system so that teachers and principals and others can continue to learn. Another important aspect is to make sure that we have an integrated data system so that we can make our decisions based on data and not hearsay and not on bad wishful work. We also want to change No Child Left Behind so that it's more research-based and forward-thinking. So many ideas that are floating around today belong in the 20th century. We've been there, we've done that, we know that which does not work, and we need to move forward to have a more robust system where we can have greater flexibility to move forward with our students' progress.
Can you hear me now? Everybody got your cell phones? Can you hear me now? All right. I concur with Dr. Atkinson that we need greater flexibility. I think there were some positive things that came out of No Child Left Behind, including the attention to subgroups and some of our most vulnerable children. I think one of the failures we've seen in education over the last quarter century is the ability to ensure that we can raise our most vulnerable children simultaneously while challenging our most gifted children. And the attention to that has helped. Now, the manner and the mechanism in which it was delivered was not successful. It did not serve us in any way as we need to, and I'm a fan of us moving forward and revamping that model. I do think there are a lot of other things that we can be doing at a state level, and I think the flexibility also needs to include ways that we at a state can ensure we keep our best teachers in the classrooms, not just our longest serving teachers. We have to be able to get the best resources and the best teachers to the right children and put the right curriculum in front of the right children. And that's going to be an important step as we move forward.
Mr. Tedesco, we know that reading is a very crucial exercise for children to master, because if they can't read, they're not likely. I'm in the microphone. I hope y'all can hear me. Can you hear me back there? Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. I'm almost swallowing this microphone.
And our preschool education programs, especially for the most vulnerable. We know that for every $1 we invest in preschool education, we reap a benefit of $18. Number two, we need to continue with expanding our diagnostic software that was a part of Senator Berger's bill to every school in the state, so that we can do like Barney Fife says, we want to nip it in the bud before it becomes a problem. And number three, we need to bring together charter schools, camps, etc., so we can expand learning in the summer and learning before and after school for our most vulnerable students. They lose 2.5 to 3 months of reading progress every single summer, and we have to address that issue.
Let me suggest that if you have questions that you've already written down you'd like to be proposed to the candidates, would you send those forward or raise your hand so that someone can pick up your question? Or if you would prefer to verbally ask your question, raise your hand and we'll try to get a microphone to you. Dr. Atkinson, how would you assess the progress of North Carolina education during the past 10 years?
North Carolina has made much progress in the past 10 years, but we've not made enough progress. And that's why it's important that a superintendent elected in this state have a history of collaboration, have a history of learning from the past, and have a vision to move North Carolina forward in an accelerated way. Old ideas from the 20th century will not work in this day and time when you have technology that can really be a game changer for public education. We have an all-time high graduation rate. We have the lowest dropout rate that we've ever had. We've been recognized by Johns Hopkins University as contributing the most to our nation's increasing its graduation rate. And Harvard University just released a report in April saying that North Carolina is one of the 6 states getting the most amount of student achievement after every dollar we spend. I am the first person to say that we need to accelerate our progress. That's why options such as charter schools, schools within schools, regional centers, etc., will have to be a part of our future. Also a part of our future will have to be our engaging the personalization of education, where students can have the opportunity to have face-to-face, can have the opportunity to have a combined face-to-face and online, to having an opportunity for all online instruction for some courses in our state. So we've made much progress, but we're not there yet, and that's why we need a very experienced leader for public instruction state superintendent.
Try it again. How about now? Yeah. Okay. I think we need multiple metrics, and I think we need multiple ways of evaluating that. I think just simply saying what our graduation rate is not sufficient. And quite frankly, when greater than 1 in 5 children in North Carolina do not graduate, that's a problem. 50% of our minority kids can't read on grade level. 60% of the kids who do graduate and go into our community college systems need remediation. What does that say about the quality of a high school diploma we're pushing on the children? That they're not prepared. That costs you as taxpayers twice. That costs those children in lost opportunities. We have to have better quality and a much more expanded rate. And we have to do it in a variety of ways. Saying that we support choice and expanding choice at a charter conference is one thing, but doing it in real life, in real action, is a whole other thing. We have to be able to stand up for our charter schools, your public schools as well. When you see organizations like the State School Boards Association tearing you down, fighting at you, you need a superintendent who's going to say, not on my watch, these are our public schools also. We're working together here and pushing an advanced agenda for our children.
I'm going to go now to Ms. Barth, who has a question.
Good morning, I'm Steve Griffin, reside in Durham, with the Durham Public Schools, and I wish we had charter schools when I was coming through. My question for the candidates on vocational education, it's my understanding if you want to teach various vocations, that you have to have a certified teacher in the classroom. To me, that seems very costly in order to have a charter school that would teach vocational education. So would you support, as a candidate for, would you support legislation where we could allow tradesmen to come in and teach vocational education without having a bureaucratic certified teacher over there?
Mr. Tedesco.
Give Mike a second. As I noted a moment ago, I support a variety of outside-the-box ways to engage tradesmen, trades, and the business communities to come into our schools, and I certainly would support that initiative. I think it's critical to get some people into our schools, to open our schoolhouse doors to the communities and the businesses, and make our schools the centers of community again, where the community around them can engage based on their local needs. So in your community, you might have a different set of trades and skills at the coast or at the mountains, that we need to be able to bring those people into the schools and show those opportunities to our children in a real-life, rich format, and not necessarily have those folks beholden to necessarily the traditional certification process.
When I was director of vocational education in our state, which was about 10 to 15 years ago, we expanded the certification to allow tradespeople to be able to teach in our schools, and that includes people who have backgrounds in automotive technology, construction, and the manufacturing, healthcare, etc. So it is not a bureaucratic process now, it has been streamlined. We've also learned from research that these teachers make excellent teachers in the classroom, especially when they have the help of classroom managers. In fact, our enrollment in vocational education has expanded in the United States, in North Carolina, with the exception of Wake County.
Ms. Butler. And this question will go to Dr. Atkinson first, and then Mr. Tedesco.
What changes to North Carolina school governance would you propose, such as state board terms, appointments, state superintendent responsibilities, etc.?
I believe it's in the best interest of 1.5 million children in our state that we have an appointed state board of education and that we have an elected state superintendent, and there are advantages and disadvantages. I believe that it would make the state board of education less partisan if the term of service would be for 6 years on a staggered term rather than an 8-year term. I believe that it's also important for the state superintendent, as was part of a court case, that the state superintendent is responsible for carrying out the policies of the State Board of Education. I'm fortunate to have enjoyed a very close working relationship with the State Board of Education, and I believe that the structure of having a state board and having a state superintendent all are ways where we can do the best for our 1.5 million children that we have in schools today.
Again, I agree on that particular process of the way the state board is set up with appointments and reducing the number of years, as well as having an elected superintendent who's accountable to the citizens of North Carolina. It is something I actually just strongly advocated for against the runoff opponent who advocated differently. I believe that's critical. But I believe we have to take a step further. Part of the superintendent's authority is also managing the administration and working with the state board to realign the administration. I would like to see us look to how we manage DPI. I'd like to change the culture, flip the model, change it from what is a lot more highly bureaucratic oversight and make it customer service focused, where they help implement your local vision, help you support your visions at local schools, and really completely change the paradigm, where our functions, our staffs, and our offices, our outreach and services to parents, to schools, to local districts, in a whole different model.
Ms. Butler.
How will each candidate ensure charter schools receive their fair share of state funds?
During the past 3 to 4 years, the Department of Public Instruction had the benefit of a very well-known Boston consulting group come to our state to look at the organization of the Department of Public Instruction and make recommendations. I would suggest that my opponent do a little bit more homework to realize that we have received awards for our communication to parents, etc. And of course, as with any organization, we are continuing to learn. My belief is that our charter schools and our public schools should have equitable funding. They should be responsible for outcomes. We should not be telling our charter schools the processes to use in getting those outcomes. And I also believe that many of our public schools, many of the laws on the books should be removed in order to have those shackles not a part of the culture. It is important because I see charter schools integral to innovation in our state, charter schools integral to our serving every single child in our state, that we do have equitable funding, and that everything is on the same level as far as funding per child.
Well, I, for one, think we need to change the whole funding paradigm, and I would advocate for that. And it will take a lot of challenge. And most people know I'll stand up for things I believe in, even if they're controversial. And I think the dollars should follow the child. It should go directly to you. It shouldn't have to pass through local school districts and boards. You shouldn't have to dance on a string to get your dollars. You know, I think that's the wrong way to do it. Again, you're public schools, you're part of the public school system. And I think real leadership, bold leadership, takes a stance on issues, stands up for issues when it's not comfortable. It's comfortable now to support more charter schools. We have a Republican General Assembly who lived at the cap. It's easy. But in 2009, before that General Assembly came into place, the Wake County School Board, under my leadership, Mr. Margiano, we put together a new legislative agenda that recommended lifting the cap on charter schools prior to it ever happening. That drew great controversy from the North Carolina School Boards Association, who said that wasn't part of their agenda. So we withdrew our membership from that School Boards Association that year to stand up for how much we believe in school choice. We then took the nation's 16th largest school system with 165 schools and worked over the course of 2 years to convert it to a parental choice model to let the schools compete and innovate off each other, because choice ultimately drives accountability.
Ms. Clark?
Good afternoon. I'm Joey Mooney, headmaster at Thomas Jefferson Castle Academy. And let's keep our funding hats on for just a moment. The reality that we're all facing: shrinking federal dollars, shrinking state dollars, shrinking local dollars. It's a challenge for every one of us, no matter what profession we're in, what service industry we're in. As the Department of Public Instruction Superintendent, what specific budget things will you try to tackle to help reduce bureaucracy and overhead and allow money to get to the classroom and to the teachers where it must be?
Well, I'd like to do a couple things. So one, in Raleigh, we have the Department of Public Instruction with 800 employees and the funding models that are in place right now. I think we can streamline operations there, first of all, to get more dollars back to the local LEAs. Second of all, I think we can work with the local LEAs to help with internal audit teams to identify where they're losing resources. In Wake County, we have a $1.5 billion system. It is 4 times the size of the operational budget at DPI. And over the last couple of years, while other districts were, feeling the hurt, and we were too, of losing teachers and losing resources, we cut $100 million without cutting a single teacher. We added teacher bonuses, hired more teachers, put $32 million back into the classrooms, and doubled our fund balance without asking our county commissioners for a single dollar more. We did that because we took skilled administrative leadership that looked at how we do business differently. We outsourced some departments, such as our parts department. We got off the state contract for purchasing fuel. We changed several other departments, renegotiated contracts, and realigned 56 senior administrative positions into 8. But you have to be willing to think different about how we use the resources we have now and be able to get those dollars back into the classrooms where they're needed.
A little known fact in North Carolina is that administration accounts for less than 5% of the total $7.34 billion budget for public education. And it is important to streamline, to look at how we get dollars to the classroom. But we also have to have a structure in place so that the teacher will not have to be the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. We have to have that support. And here are specific things that we're doing for the rest of the top dollars that will benefit charter schools and other public schools around our state. Number one, we're building a technology system where it's like an ATM, where you can go to that one place and get resources where teachers will not have to spend time and effort getting lesson plans together. They can choose from the best teachers in the state. We are also doing site license agreements so that all of our 100+ charter schools and our 2,500 schools will not have to go through the same process that many times. We can do it one time for all the schools in our state. The second thing, or the third thing that we can do is to make sure that we continue to do what we're doing in the department, is to be customer focused, to ask you, the customer, you, the person, of what do you need from us. And as we have gone across the state, we have found that that schools and teachers and others have told us that they need to focus on professional development and curriculum materials that will help them in the classroom and save them time.
We'll take, how many questions do you have, Ms. Moore?
We'll just have, I have two that I'll combine and one more after that.
We'll take these 3 questions and then we'll move to a closing statement. So I recognize you.
Thank you. So we have two questions on funding equity. What would you do to address the issue of funding equity for charter schools versus the local school districts sending lower PA charter schools, especially in light of the lifted cap, as well as financial discrepancies among large metropolitan areas as compared to the more rural areas?
My approach would be the following. Number one, we would establish all of our charter schools as an entity whereby when we get the dollars for public schools, those dollars would flow directly to the charter school, and it would be based on the number of students in that school. What we have as a model now is not sustainable. It's not in the best interest of charter schools, and it's not in the best interest of public schools or other public schools. We need to establish, especially for the charters that have a great record and are continuing to make continuous improvement, an entity whereby they receive funds directly.
That's pretty much what I said a few moments ago. I would, promote the dollars following the job directly to the charter schools as opposed to as pass-through dollars with 7% of formulas from the state. I think they should be equal dollars. They're equal children, so they should have equal dollars, and they should be directly to the charter schools.
Well,
Funding remains a very important question on people's minds. The next two questions being again on that topic. Would you support lottery funds equally being distributed to charter schools as they are to traditional public schools? And at this time, charter schools do not have a pre-K program as the traditional schools do. Would you support an effort to allow charter schools to receive those pre-K funds as well?
In the interest of being able to serve all the children in our state who can benefit from preschool education, it is important that our charter schools, as well as our public schools, have access to preschool dollars. The last legislation moved those funds from the Department of Public Instruction to the Department of Health and Human Services. So there is a challenge there for all of our schools in
And I think the first half of your question asked about the lottery and some of those dollars. And so what I would say is this. Yes, I support equal distribution of lottery dollars. I do think we have to be careful how that's set up. And I think we've watched, and I tend to say things in a way that's a little controversial, so forgive me now, some of you take it that way, but I think the lottery's been a bit of a bait and switch. We've passed some dollars out, particularly at the local school districts when we used to return state sales tax to them, and now we don't return state sales tax to the local districts, and we give them the lottery money and we think it's a wash, and it's not. So I think we need to watch that real closely. I would advocate that school districts should not be paying the state sales tax. To some extent, I mean, you're getting tax dollars into a school system to pay the tax dollars back. They're not going back to the school system. It's almost like money laundering kind of thing, right? So I would not support that. I think we need to advocate getting the sales tax back to the local districts, including our charter schools. And I think additionally, pre-K dollars. Again, whatever we do for our traditional public schools, we should be doing for our charter schools. And instead of trying to put more restrictions on our charter schools, we should be trying to add more flexibility to our traditional public schools so that they can compete. So I would support those initiatives as well.
Dr. Atkinson answer the first part. So
The lottery funds are a drop in the bucket when it comes to the total funding of public education. And consequently, as a supporter of charter schools, I believe that there can be a better impact to focus on having and making sure that all of our public schools, including our charters, receive an equitable amount of money for the children that you serve every day in your classrooms. The sales tax is another issue. I agree with my opponent. That is something that would need to be addressed, and that's a small amount of money also. But in this day and time, we have very limited resources. Every dime counts. We also, as a state, have to address the capital needs. And the lottery language is very murky, whereby it is very difficult to see how those dollars can be used for capital outlay for charter schools. We need to have a different approach than what we have now with the lottery funds.
I think that we don't have any further questions coming from the audience. So at this time, I would like to recognize Mr. Tedesco to come and give his closing statement, and then he will be followed by Dr. Atkinson, and then I will come back and close this out.
Einstein told us we will not solve the serious problems of our day with the same level of thinking that created it. He further went on to say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again, expecting different results. I can tell you this, I will bring a different perspective to the role. A different perspective, one that will challenge the status quo, one that will stand up and fight for our children over our systems, one that will work to empower our parents, one that will be able to see past the system that was built around me. I will tell you this, it is now more than ever that our children need somebody willing to fight for them, and I think they're worth fighting for. I think it's going to be critical. We all know, I mean, we're not, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand the way political science and redistricting maps work. We're going to likely have a Republican General Assembly again. And with that in place, I think it's important that we have a leader who's a strong advocate for education, who will be able to work with them, who will not be marginalized, who will be able to stand up and speak out on behalf of our children, advocate on behalf of our parents, and produce real results, real measurable results that will be accountable for years to come to move our children and advance in North Carolina further than we've ever gone before. I think we have a real opportunity to bring real reform, but I'll tell you this, my friends, challenging the status quo is never pretty. So if you want to go along to get along kind of guy, do not vote for me. I'm not your guy. If you want a spark plug, a catalyst, someone who's going to rev the engines to bring real change and fire to really spark what our children need in North Carolina, vote for me. We'll get the job done. You can learn more about me at our website, tedescoforkids.com. I grew up in Sunday school, and there I learned that where there's no vision, men will perish. So we've laid out a bold vision on our website, a 4-part plan with 4 detailed components underneath that. And I want you to be with me as we help move that forward for all the children of North Carolina. Again, tedescoforkids.com. I thank you very much for your time and attention today, and look forward to seeing you at the finish line in November.
To quote Mark Twain, some of the most dangerous people are those that don't know that which they don't know. And then, to quote Good to Great, When you look at good to great, Collins, the author, says that the people who are able to have sustained change, who are able to have a vision of where an organization must go, are those who have the experience and know where there can be needed improvements, know where you need to throw away that which is being done and it's not getting results. I submit to you that I have the experience to continue to move North Carolina forward in a way that will make all of North Carolinians proud. It is also important to have a superintendent who has collaborated with people on both sides of the aisle. And many people will tell you that politics, party, and pressure are not a part of what makes me tick. What makes me move is the decisions and how they affect every single child in the state. And my philosophy is, and I've tried to live by this ever since I taught children in Roanoke, Virginia, and Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and that is, will what I do make a difference for the child? And how will it benefit the child? And will this help the outcome or the outcomes of what we want in public education? I have received over 15 awards, not because of keeping things the same, but making change. And you can go to my website and see those awards that I have received for innovation, for commitment, dedication, and leadership in our state. I fly frequently, and one thing's for sure, that when I get on a plane, a large plane or a small plane, I want that pilot to have someone who has had many hours of flying. I want a pilot who knows how to land that plane when there is turbulence. I want a pilot who is willing to communicate with people from all walks of life to make sure that we have a successful landing. My record shows that I have been able to collaborate with people across the aisle. I've been invited to the White House by the Bush administration to talk about reading. I've been invited by the Obama administration. I've had influence on the Democratic legislature and the Republican legislature. While we may not always agree, I have gained the respect of people who give us the dollars in the General Assembly to listen to me and to call when there are ways that they want to improve education. I don't know whether you're going to vote early or whether you're going to vote on November 6th, but I ask for your support, and I ask you to put June in November. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the prize is to provide a high-quality education for every child in this state. And I challenge you to keep your eyes on the prize as every day you go into your facilities with that very much in mind, as you do and have been doing for years. The second most important prize is to select the person who will sit in the office of superintendent. You've had a chance to hear from the two candidates for that office. You've had a chance to examine their views. Now it's an important decision for you to make as to which candidate meets your needs and rises to the level of your expectation. I've had the privilege of running in a number of elections. These two folk are making tremendous personal sacrifice to travel the state, to present their views, and to convince the citizens of the importance of the role they will play going forward in the future. The future of education, believe it or not, is very much in the hands of either Dr. Atkinson or Mr. Tedesco. The decision is up to you. So each of you in this room, as they have challenged you, must go forth, cast your vote, choose your candidate. But more importantly, give a warm expression of appreciation for them making themselves available to be chosen to be in the office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. Join me in thanking both of them for being here and for